your relationship to money is a reflection to your relationship to your sense of identity in the world. So if you start unpicking why you spend, how you earn, how you invest, you'll quickly see most of the values that you have about life. I'm Margot, the founder of Your Juno.
I'm Haraya, a 4-time entrepreneur who knows how brave you have to be to start your own venture. So I'm talking to women entrepreneurs, creatives, and experts to understand what it really takes to do things your own way. Welcome to Oshi Can Drive, the podcast where we have brave conversations about dreams, challenges, and trade-offs to help you take the next step on your unique journey to building something meaningful. Let's get into it. Today, I'm sitting down with Margot de Broglie, the co-founder of Your Juno, which she co-founded with her sister. It's a financial education platform built specifically for women and non-binary people. Margot spotted the gender money gap. So today, we're here to unpack everything that she's learned about why women have historically felt so disconnected from money, what it actually takes to change your relationship with it, and why the gap between wanting wealth and being ready for it is way more psychological than what we think. So Margot, welcome to Oshi Can Drive.
Thank you for having me. It's like my favorite thing in the world to sit on couches with my girlfriends and talk about money.
With your story, I really want to go back to the very beginning because the origin of the app really traces back to how you were brought up by your mom, who made financial education a priority in the household. And coming from an environment that was completely different to that, I'm so curious, what does that look like?
Yeah, totally. So I think my sister and I had quite a unique relationship with money because at the age of 6 and 7, my mom gave us our first credit cards because basically she was raising us as a single mother and she wanted to make sure that as young women we felt comfortable with the world of money. So every month we would have our little allowance and we would buy our own toothbrush, our own book notes for school. Everything we needed had to be part of that allowance. And that meant that from a very young age, first of all, I made the mistakes very early. Like at 9 years old, I decided that I needed this like pink suitcase kit for some reason. And I spent all my money for the 2 month on a suitcase kit and then had to come knocking on my mom's door being like, I can't afford shampoo anymore or something like that. But at that time, the stakes were very low. And it also meant we had these like money dates with our mom. So once a week, every Sunday, we would sit down and we would go through our finances. So what had we spent the money on, what we were looking at spending it on next week. And that's a habit that I've kept all my life. And it means that for me, the world of money never felt intimidating. It never felt like something that I couldn't be part of because I felt from being a child that actually money was something accessible, that I was fluent in. Can you think of money almost like a foreign language? Of course, if you don't speak Spanish, you're not going to understand Spanish, but you can learn Spanish and you can learn the words. And it's the same with financial jargon, you know, ETF, VCs, all those different words that people use that feel scary because you don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
You just need to learn the definition and then they won't be scary anymore. It's just like a language.
When did you realize that your upbringing was quite rare in this sense?
I think the biggest aha moment was at university where everyone was starting to have their own money. And whether it was student loans or it was a bit of pocket money from their parents or you had your job, you really noticed actually how much people were struggling with understanding their finances. And that's also where, for my sister and I, the gap between my female friends and my male friends became so apparent because I would speak to guy friends and a lot of them were investing in crypto, they had their stock portfolio, and most importantly, they were speaking about it with each other. It was part of their conversations with their mates, you know, what have you invested in? What are your returns? It was part of their culture. Whereas a lot of my female friends, some of the smartest women I know, like doctors and lawyers, they felt like the world of money wasn't for them. And they felt like I am bad with money is just an identity that they will have to keep forever. And I found that so frustrating.
Yeah. And it's almost too easy to just say that. I'm just bad with money. Like, that's it.
Well, that's the interesting thing is like, I think what I want to say to women who feel that way is like, one, it's not your fault because women are being raised to think that they're bad with money. And so we see the examples in culture, like think of Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, who, you know, like she spends all her money on shoes so she can't afford rent. You have the Shopaholic series. Those are not just anecdotal stories. They're part of a much bigger way that women and money are portrayed. There was a study done by Sterling Bank that looked at the language that is being used to speak about money for men and women. And what they found was that 93% of finance articles targeted at men focus on growing their wealth. So it's the idea of investing. It's the idea you can make more. And I think it was 70% of articles focused towards women are focused on spending less. So it's the budget, it's the reining in your spending, make sure you don't spend on the shoes, on the latte, etc.
Which even psychologically is like really negative and heavily charged with emotions of like guilt and scarcity.
It's like I can't make more, so I have to be really, really careful with the little bit of money that I have. And so when they looked, you know, from a psychological perspective, the metaphor that they found, how women relate to wealth, it's like a pond. It's finite. It's stagnant. It's small. You have to protect it. Whereas the metaphor that they feel how men relate to money, it's like a river. It's flowing. So you're spending it, but there's more coming in at the top. So there's really this potential of like, you can grow it. It's a flow. And that's for me, like, currency comes from the word current. Like money is directly linked to this thing of flow, of like it wants to be moved. But if we stagnate it and if we're scared, then we get stuck. So this thing of being bad with money as women, it's like, it's not your fault that you believe that, but you have the power to change that. And it doesn't take long. And that was for us really the starting point for Juno, is to say, okay, we know this knowledge. How can we make it more accessible? And so first it was just a newsletter, and each newsletter was a different theme. So one of them was insurance, one of them was budgeting, the other one taxes. And we put, you know, a sign up link on our Instagram, on our LinkedIn. And the interesting thing is it went viral. I mean, for our sense, it went viral. There was like a couple of thousands sign-ups very quickly, and people were loving them and responding to them and implementing them. And so that's when we realized, okay, there's something to be done here. People are hungry for financial education that they can trust.
Yes, that's so important.
So it's not your bank telling you to invest in something because they're making a referral fee, but really this thing of independent, one that is, you know, driven by women as well. So we lack so much female role models in the space. So actually saying, you know, here are experts you can look up to that are like you. The thing I often feel, especially with women, it's like we care often so much more about community, maybe about the environmental impact of our actions, about the social impact, about beauty, about like there's so many values. And if we don't see those values reflected in the people who are speaking to us about money, then of course it's not going to resonate. And then it feels like the way money is being spoken about at the moment is so much about restriction, especially for women. And then, of course, I don't want to read another article
to read that,
telling me that I can't buy the latte or the matcha or something like that. And that's why I'm broke.
And especially when we know that's not what makes a difference. You know, it's like focusing on this minute detail, which like you're missing on the bigger picture. So wait, let's not get carried away. So you start a business straight out of university, the newsletter. How did you go from like newsletter to the app?
So what we realized is we needed something personalized because everyone's financial situation is so different.
So true.
So the model that we took, going back to languages, was Duolingo. So we were like, it's so easy to learn a language like Spanish on Duolingo. Why don't we have something similar for finances? So it was gamified, engaging, short bite-sized modules that really are personalized both to your situation and to your learning level. And so we raised the first round of funding, which was 230,000, which came because at the time we were just speaking to everyone we could speak to. I remember sending cold messages on LinkedIn to like anyone in the finance space. And so we got introduced to the investors who eventually became the first angel investors.
So how did you choose your investors?
That first round, we couldn't believe that people wanted to invest in us. So we didn't, I mean, I still love them. Like those investors were some of the best people who really believed in the mission. So I think that was the sense at the start, was really just like, you believe in the same thing that we believe in. And
did you notice the same like gender gap in the VC investment space?
Yeah, so much more. So we raised that first round, and then we raised a second round of 2.5 million from VCs. And that was a very different process because there's the gender gap in VCs. There's the fact that we were young women. We were white, so that was already a huge privilege. Like Black women, it's so much harder to fundraise. But being young women is super hard to fundraise. And we were building a product for women, which a lot of, VCs were like, that's a bit niche.
Yeah. And finance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
just keeps getting smaller
niche,
and smaller.
We're 50% of the population. How is that niche?
Exactly.
Yeah. But so what we realized, I think, in that fundraise was there were investors who saw us and our identity lost our credibility. So they were like young women in a space that they don't understand. And then there were investors who saw it as our superpower because they said, actually, so few people have been able to crack finance for women. Like all the banks are trying to, everyone's trying to, but no one's able to reach them.
Because they don't have that authentic, trustworthy, relatable angle. It's like,
you
I don't want
are
to hear
your target
about
audience.
it. Exactly.
So maybe you can do it.
Yeah.
And so the investors that we ended up choosing for that round was oversubscribed, which meant that we could actually say, I want you in, I want you in, I want you in, and I don't want you, which was a huge
what an amazing
privilege. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And those investors still like the best people in the world. I have called them crying so many times and like such good relationships with them and really, felt their heart like deeply in it as well. But it meant that we could choose, and we really felt the ones who, would get on the call and we'd end up arguing for the first 15 minutes if the gender pay gap is still real. I'm like, why am I having to do this right now?
Like that is not part of the brief right now. We have passed this. It's so funny, this point that you said about how the identity can either be like your weakness or your superpower of like being a woman. I have this conversation with friends all the time. And you'll have some that think that it puts them at a disadvantage, which I'm sure it does in certain ways. But then you'll have those that think, no, it's my superpower. And again, it just shows you how like the mindset and like the psychological positioning of yourself and your worth and who you are and what you have to bring to the table is so important. So what did raising money that early, but also building a business that early, like what do you think that brought you that experience couldn't have? And I think there's a certain element of naivete.
We were so naive going into it, so naive. But I think the perfect combination was the naivety combined with such a deep passion for the mission. So I think Juno was really born not because we wanted to become founders, but because we saw a problem and we were so furious about the way that things were and that they weren't changing. And it meant that it was really born from the heart. And especially at the start, like for me, the biggest success metrics was every woman who told us that she had negotiated her raise, that she'd made her first investment, that she'd built an emergency fund. Those stories were what kept me going. And so the combination of like that utter commitment to the mission combined with naivety was just, we were unstoppable because we were just like, we're just going to go. Like this has to happen. And if we're the ones doing it, then fine. But I think the interesting thing about funding and like how raising funding, I think also for a while made us lose track a little bit of what we were doing. Because I think when you're building very early stage, you have no idea if what you're building is working. There's days where you wake up and you're like, I'm going to take over the world. And the next day you're like, I'm going to close tomorrow. And so then the fundraise is almost like a stamp of approval or a stamp of recognition from the outside world of like, this business is successful. They have raised 2.5 million at a $10 million valuation. And it's like, you're doing it. And so then you end up building not for what your users need or what you're deeply convinced or committed to, but you build for what investors want to see. Yeah. And that can be quite different. And I think that's what happened to us, where we, after the first fundraise, we were like, okay, what metrics do we need to hit for Series A? And so we were building towards that rather than really thinking,
that becomes the North Star, right? The
is
drivers
it a business
are
that we're
hitting
proud
the
of?
metrics.
Is this a business that is supporting our users? So I think that's the danger I see in glamorizing fundraising so much. Because it's actually just a sign that you've convinced investors. It doesn't mean that your product is working. And
it's a first step. It's an important step if you're choosing that route. But exactly, it doesn't equally mean that it's working. What advice would you give now, your 22-year-old self that's just starting?
Yeah, I'd say really define what success looks like for you and don't get caught up in the glamour of outside versions of success. And I know that for me, success is really, am I committed? Am I building something that I'm proud of? Is it true to my values, what I'm building? And so orienting around that is really what I would say to her. And at the same time, I think the mistakes we made, are part of our path, and I'm glad we made them. I mean, the biggest mistake we made was just overhiring after the fundraise. Like, you receive all this money and suddenly you're like, great, I can hire a team of 10 people. But we didn't need that many people. Like in Y Combinator, they often say until you found product market fit, you should stay a team of less than 5 people, because that means you're nimble. That means you can move. And suddenly we were 12 people, which suddenly means you need to have HR meetings and one-on-ones, and you have this whole structure.
It slows down.
It really slows you down. And then having to fire them was like the hardest thing in the world as well, because it's people that have given so much of themselves for this job, and often you become friends with them as well. Like, we were all so young, we were all figuring it out together, and then being like, you have to go, was so painful.
So the platform is named after Juno Moneta, the goddess, the Roman goddess of money.
Something that was really important for us was like, how do we show that money is a field that women feel comfortable in? And going back to history, actually, today, money is a very male-dominated field, but actually in the past, it wasn't like that. And when you look at different deities and different goddesses, a lot of them were feminine goddesses. So the word money comes from Juno Moneta, which is the Roman goddess of money, and money was minted in her temple. And we're like, okay, let's bring back
I love that.
the goddess of money.
Let's bring her back. Talking about history, I think it's a very important section to discuss. The history, the origin of some of the beliefs that we've inherited. So like historically and psychologically, what's been happening that actually explains the picture that we see today. And I don't think many people know this. I mean, I don't know if it's a common fact or not, but women were not legally allowed to have a bank account until 1975. That's in the UK. Like, in the UK. That is just crazy. So you had to have like a legal chaperone. That's one generation ago. That could be your mother, that could be your grandmother. So what are the implications of that? Like, how much of what we're seeing today is actually being carried from what was happening not that long ago?
Money isn't just about money. Money has to do with what you believe about money. And most of the money stories you've inherited are made by the age of 7. So by the age of 7 years old, whatever you believe about money is probably going to run the show most of your life, unless you consciously choose to unpick what's there. And so by the age of 7, what you've inherited is the beliefs that your mother had. And your mother has inherited the beliefs that her mother had. And so we're really passing down through generation these beliefs where there was a time not long ago, like you said, where women weren't allowed to open their own bank account. They weren't allowed to buy it in the stock market. They were considered, they were literally considered like the world of finance wasn't for them. And so it's really worth thinking about, if you're choosing to unpick your relationship with money, like, what are my first memories of money? So if your parents were fighting about money, we see a lot of people where that's the case, and they then equate money as being a source of conflict. If you grew up in a household where parents were often saying like rich people are bad, then you might have internalized the belief that being rich equals being bad. And so you don't want to make more money because of that. Or there's so many different variations of this, of like, a woman needs a man to take care of her. If that's the script that was running in your family, you have deeply internalized that in some places. And the fastest way to notice these things is when you act in a way that is surprising. When you notice that there's something unconscious that is driving your behaviors. So for example, somebody gets paid quite a lot in their bank account and goes on a spending spree for a week after that. And suddenly after a week has spent, 50% of that money, because there's a part in them that feels so deeply uncomfortable with having £10,000 sitting in their bank account, because that's more than their parents ever had in savings or something like that.
When I was using your app, I noticed that it helps you unpack these patterns, right? So basically, okay, maybe you don't know what the narrative is because you just don't have a memory of it, but then these are the scenarios. What do you do with this money? And then depending on how people behave, you can then infer, okay, well, this means that probably X, Y, and Z.
Totally.
There's so much conditioning that we're not even aware of. We just think it's the status quo, but no. So you essentially explain it that wanting more money and the ability to actually be ready to hold that money are two completely different things. And actually, the example you just gave now of someone going ahead and spending that. So what does it look when someone is actually ready, and how can people start to build towards that capacity?
Yeah. So the first part, I think, is you're getting closer to being ready when you're deeper in alignment and have integrated those unconscious stories. If you've the first step is bringing awareness to them. You might not, you're not going to clear everything, but just having a sense of like, okay, these are like the key themes that I've internalized, and then you can notice them when they come up of like, this is a pattern. The second one is working with the body. And I feel like that's one piece that is so missing in most financial education is like, we know now, like the body keeps the scores. So much of our trauma lives in our body and so much of our financial fear lives in our body. Like the fear of survival that money can trigger, that is an instinctive animal fear that lives in your body. So you might be mentally doing all sorts of money work. Unless you actually move the fears in your body, you're going to keep looping in them because it's more than just a mental exercise.
So how do you do that?
So one way of doing that is really working with the emotions as they come up and moving the emotions. So it's a process called emotional release that we do a lot now and that we teach people how to do. It's like, okay, so you travel back into the memories, you find those places in your body and you actually like move that energy. Often there's a lot of anger, like especially women, there's so much anger, and rightfully so. Like you're allowed to be angry at the amount of things you've had to sacrifice, the amount of things your mother had to sacrifice for money, and really finding that place of anger in your body and like screaming and letting it out and really like, shaking, stomping, whatever it is, but finding ways to not just keep that energy stuck in the body. And what I would say here as well is also like increasing your capacity for pleasure. I feel like for me, one of the biggest themes is pleasure is one of the fastest way to heal your relationship with money.
Because, okay, how do you do that? Like, I'm trying to like piece it together.
Why pleasure? Because so much of financial advice we receive is about restriction, is about saying no to the things you want. But actually money is there to, part of what money is good for is you deserve to feel good. You deserve to have pleasure, whilst also noticing all the times that you're spending money or trying to make money because you're using it as a substitute for a feeling that you're not feeling. So it's like right now, I don't know, you had a tough day at work, you're feeling sad, you're going out and you buy something to make yourself feel better. You're feeling overwhelmed by your relationship, you're going to go online and scroll. Like you're using money to do emotional labor that it was never meant to do. And so really getting clear of like, okay, is this actually bringing me deep pleasure, or is this something that I'm using to numb or a dopamine hit or fix for something I'm not wanting to feel? So that's also a big part of healing your relationship with money, is like looking at all the things you're projecting onto money that have nothing to do with money and really understanding what's underneath. So that's part of like the work we do with the body, is also increasing your capacity for pleasure. So when you're spending on something that you love, genuinely letting yourself enjoy that and not feeling guilty, not feeling a sense of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but actually really knowing like, yeah, I deserve to have the matcha, I deserve to buy the flowers.
If you flip it around and you're like, well, actually, this person just made me a matcha, or this person just fixed my, I don't know, my pipes. Like, thank you for doing this. It completely shifts the approach, and that moment is not so charged with negativity.
So much of money today, because also of Apple Pay and card transactions, it's almost like it's anonymous and we don't even really notice that it's happening.
You take your phone out, you don't even look, you just double click on the side, do this while having a conversation. You're probably not even looking, like the person typed in the thing and went away. It's like the moment never happened.
Totally. Money has become so much more abstract.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to understand what it actually is, and yet it is a force that is governing so much of our lives. And so the duality of that is so hard to wrap our head around, is like, I spend so much of my life trying to earn money, trying to spend, spending money, but I don't actually know what money is. I don't have a relationship with money because I don't feel it anymore. So one of the first things I say to people who are interested in changing their relationship to money is just bring awareness to money in your life. notice when you're spending money and really see if you can make it this thing of the money date that my mom made us do. Like that is
the money date is when you sit down and you
once a week.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as just actually looking through your bank transactions. And for so many people, that is so confronting.
Yeah.
And it's really trying to go at it not from a place of shame or of judgment, but just really like curiosity.
There's something I really want to talk to you about, because you're very critical about the manifest, abundance, vision board, mantras, all of that.
Yeah. For me, the problem is the social media version of abundance speak that we see. The first part that is like my biggest problem with it is it removes the sense of systemic problem that is there. It makes it all a you problem. And so there's really this sense of like, I have people in the community who took part in abundance courses and it's not working, and the coach is just telling them that they're not trying hard enough. It means you still have some limiting beliefs in there if it's not happening. No, maybe it means that like the system is really difficult to make money in. And so there's really this sense of the money is 80% systemic and 20% you. And you cannot be made to feel guilty for the things that are outside of your control. I think the other piece with the abundance thing is like mindset work and energetic work really matters. Like we spoke about this, like increasing your capacity to hold wealth, understanding all of this is important work. Yeah. But then you have to align your actions behind it. You can't just positive think your way into more financial 100%. Abundance. And what I struggle with a lot of these people, they don't have any financial background. Yes. And they've never made money. Like you ask them about investing in the stock market and they have no idea what it is.
Yeah, it's like, where is this money coming from?
Exactly. You're a business coach, but you've never built a business and you're just teaching people about abundance. It's because they use social media where they're trying to promote this magic pill because that's what people want to see and hear on social media. It's like, here is the blueprint for your 5-figure month and you can just follow it and it'll be easy. And it's like, that doesn't exist. You have to do the healing work yourself. You have to go through that. And I think that's where the real financial confidence actually comes from, is when you learn these tools. Because when you negotiated your raise, you feel unstoppable. Like that's the real sense of financial confidence. It's not because you're manifesting that you're going to feel financially confident.
I wish we could show a chart of what it looks like when you start investing, like as early as possible, and how that accumulates over
Compound
time.
interest.
Actually, when you're young, your biggest advantage to building wealth is time.
Totally. And that's why for me, financial education matters so much, because this is what we should be taught as children. This is what we should be taught in schools and at university, so that you don't spend the first 10, 20 years of your life making expensive mistakes that you're never going to have the chance to make up for, because you're never going to get that time back.
I also want to talk about women and guilt. What we can observe is that women tend to have no problem spending on their children or on others. But when it comes to spending on themselves, even if it's on something productive, there's still a huge amount of guilt that comes with that. So, yeah, where does that come from? And again, why is it specific to women more than men?
As women, one of the things that we're taught to fear the most is being selfish. And the quality that is the most revered in a woman is selflessness. You're taking care of your children, you're taking care of your community, generosity,
nurturing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the feminine that is really praised. And so therefore, if I'm spending money on myself, I'm being selfish, because that's money I could have spent on something else.
Yeah.
And so really there's this sort of martyrdom that can come of like spending money on myself is not something that is something that I'm allowed to do. And so I feel extremely guilty each time I do. And I think the other part of that is, for a lot of people, they've been made to believe that they have to choose between doing good in the world and making a lot of money. And so for me, that polarity is one that I feel is such a shame, because so many young people choose, like they don't want to give up financial comfort. And so they say, well, then I have to choose going into a career that I don't really believe in. And so how do we combine the two? How do we show people that it is possible to do the things that you most deeply care about, the work that is needed from you, and you're allowed to get super rich doing that? Yeah. Like it's not, we need the people who care deeply about the world, who care deeply about their values, we need those people to be millionaires.
Yeah.
Because then they can have such a bigger impact in the world.
100%.
But we're saying this almost like it's a being broke, like that's something morally superior.
Yes.
Of like, I'm not participating, I'm broke. Actually, if you were holding money right now, what you're doing, you could do it times 10.
Exactly.
And so it's almost like, I really want to bring the sense of like, it's almost your responsibility.
There's another concept that we spoke about last time, and you've said that the qualities we associate with financial success, things like rationality, competitiveness, risk-taking, so those are essentially masculine values. And so what does that mean for a woman who's trying to build wealth?
Totally. Like masculine and feminine lives in each of us. So it's not masculine is all men, feminine is all women, but kind of looking at the polarity of masculine and feminine and then saying the qualities that are often associated with the masculine is, risk-taking, linearity, action, will, aggression, competition, like that's all masculine. Feminine intelligence is cyclical. It's more emotional, it's more intuitive, it's generous, it's nurturing. Like those are the qualities that are often associated with the feminine. But the way the financial world is set up today is very much in this idea of like, go hard, go strong, and constantly be growing. That's not only what we're expected to do in our personal finances, that's what the whole economy is built on. Yes. Constant growth year after year after year. But I don't think that works. And so this expectation of constantly be growing means that so many of us burn out. We feel so guilty when we have a few months where we're doing something less. But what if we embraced the cyclical intelligence in our finances and saying, actually, maybe your money, just like the cyclical intelligence in your body, just like the seasons in nature, like nothing grows all the time. Yeah. And so, for example, you had, I'm sure, a very high-paying job before you started this, and you took the risk of saying, I'm going to go through a period where I'm probably going to earn less. Maybe I'm even going to spend some of my savings, and I'm going to go through this dip from a purely financial perspective. But it's a risk that I'm taking because in the long term, like that's how I want to live my life. I want to do the big things.
I mean, it's so true what you're saying, because there's absolutely nothing in the world, like in the natural world and the universe and the laws of everything that you can observe that just grows every single year, year on year. Like there's always this cyclicality. So why would we expect it to be different with money and with business?
If we think about resources like a squirrel in autumn is going to take some nuts, and he knows that winter is coming and he's prepared for winter. And so in winter, he's not freaking out because it's not summer anymore. He's just like, I'm going to eat my little nuts and I know that summer is going to come again. What if we related the same way to our finances? You have a period where you're peaking, great, put money aside, invest in the stock market, fill up your emergency fund. And then you have a phase where actually what you need is rest. Maybe it's time with family, it's community, those things that deeply, truly matter in your life as well. And you can trust that it's okay that you're using the resources that you've built up, because summer is going to come again. And that removes so much of the pressure, because it's like, rest is allowed, like rest is part of the cycle. So that's what I mean for me when there's like a cyclical intelligence. It's either like the straight line or the spiral. And sometimes it really helps to going back to the spiral when it comes to your finances and seeing that there's models of doing it that don't have to feel so alienating and that don't have to feel so at odds with the way that you relate in the world, and so just like, you know, discipline and punishment. What I always say with money is like, can you move from a place of devotion rather than discipline? So instead of like forcing yourself into strict rules, asking yourself really, what do I care about? What do I want my money to amplify in the world? What more do I want to bring into the world? And then you can move from your heart, you can move from a place that feels good rather than trying to be just like super tight and like, I can't do this, I can't do that. I need the spreadsheet. I hate spreadsheets. I don't know how to fit my life into a spreadsheet. It's like there's a way of doing it in a much more intuitive way.
And what does that look like for you?
So for me, I've been really returning to economics and thinking, okay, like how do we build something collectively so that we don't each have to go do this money work and figure it out on our own, but that we have a structure for all of us. I think for me, the biggest part is like what I see in a lot of young people at the moment is despair. It's a sense of like the things are as they are and there's no hope that we can ever change them. And so if we don't hope, then what's the point? Because like it doesn't feel like anything is within reach. So for me, one of the big questions I've been thinking about is like, how do we bring back hope?
And do you feel that the crypto world helps?
A little bit. I think crypto is interesting because they've reinvented what money is, and they've shown that a completely different kind of money is possible. And just that is epic. The challenge with crypto is, I think it's still scarcity based. So it's still like there's a limited amount of crypto, and that's why it's valuable. So there's something, scarcity focused in the way it's being produced. And it doesn't respond to the economy. So what I mean by that, it's an algorithm that decides how often Bitcoin gets released, how often gets halved. There's no feedback mechanism. Yeah. So in that way, there's limitations there as well. The other thing with crypto is like, I think it's 85% of crypto users are men. So there's also a deep lack of
feminine touch. So you teach about money, and you've said before that this was never really only about money.
Yeah.
So what is it actually about?
Yeah. I think money, your relationship to money is a reflection to your relationship to your sense of identity in the world. And so often it's about what you think success means, what you think safety is, what you think belonging means. Do you need a certain amount of money to belong in the world? So if you start unpicking why you spend, how you earn, how you invest, you'll quickly see most of the values that you have about life. And especially the places where you're trying to make up for a sense of not being enough. I feel like that dictates so much of our relationship to money, is a feeling of I need to make more money so that I'm more recognized or I'm more successful and I'm going to be more loved. I need to buy certain things so that I'm accepted or that I'm seen a specific way. Like if you trace back the breadcrumbs of how you spend and earn money, it can show you a lot about probably the things that you don't really want to think about because there's like wounds and spots there from childhood. But then the epic thing is if you do that work and really redefine those things for yourself, that's where you can start living an incredible life, where you're not driven anymore by the checklist of society or your parents or something like that, and saying like, actually, this is not my definition of success. Yes, Dad, I know you want me to be an investment banker, but I'd prefer to earn less and be able to pick up my kid from school.
I completely relate to that. Often you'll have conversations with friends. Oh, if you win the lottery, if you got this amount, what would you do? And it's like, actually, there isn't that much more that I would want to change in my life. And I think this is so interesting because, just chasing money for the sake of it does not necessarily equal success or happiness.
Going back to Juno, what the process taught me was like, if I don't get very clear about why I'm doing it, I'm going to keep chasing the milestones and they're always going to push back and I'm never going to reach that point. And I can spend my life doing that. And if I get really clear on the why, a bigger thing, and that's where it gets exciting. It's like, cool, now I'm going to make more money and I'm going to, start a project that's going to touch people, because then it becomes so much more worthwhile than just seeing the 6% return. Like, what does that even mean?
I mean, you've built this platform, you speak about this topic, you teach about it, you help thousands of women. And has it changed your own relationship to money in the process of doing so?
Probably in a few different ways. The first one was really that moment when we fundraised and suddenly I was responsible for taking care of 2 million and realizing like, this is a big thing. And it's really made me realize even more this piece around like, I think the fastest way to make more money in the world is saying yes to a project that is bigger than yourself. And then you just figure it out. Like find something that you deeply care about. Maybe for you, it's this podcast, the community, and say yes, and then you're going to make it work. And I feel like that was a really powerful imprint for me of just how much money and commitment to a cause together are unstoppable. So that was really powerful.
So for listeners discovering your Juno today and trying to understand how it works as a business, how does the business actually work for you?
So the business model is, there's two streams. There's direct to consumer and there's B2B. So the app, if you download it on the App Store, is completely free. There's no ads. This is not where we make our money. And so how we've made our money is through working with banks, because the problems that a lot of banks have is that their customers also don't know about money. So we've worked with banks like Santander, Barclays and other ones. They send us their customers who have, for example, Santander, they have a lot of customers who they can see have money in their savings account that they should be investing, but the customers aren't investing, and especially women. And so they send them to us. We educate those customers. This is how you invest in the stock market. This is what you do with your extra money. And then most of them go back to Santander and say, okay, I'm ready to invest in the stock market now.
That's incredible.
And so it's a win-win because the customers are investing. Most of them are women. Santander is getting more customers to invest, and we're educating them. So it's just
I love it. And this is another example of how, in a way, you can change the system.
Yeah. It means that we can stay for regular customers completely unbiased, which was like the most important thing for us. We will never tell you investing is great. Here's how you can invest with blah, blah, blah. Like the whole point is that we're your older sister. Yeah. We're not going to recommend anything where we're getting a commission.
What is the single decision that most changed the trajectory of the business?
Definitely fundraising. My challenge with venture-backed startups is that the growth expectations are relentless.
Yeah.
So once you start fundraising, you kind of get on the hamster wheel of fundraising. And so you're expected to fundraise every 18 months. And you need very specific metrics for your next fundraise. So you're kind of just like very, very quickly running, trying to grow your business 10 to 15% a year minimum.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to do and to stay really true to your mission with those kind of growth expectations.
Okay, we're getting into the other story. I'm just going to let you tell it.
Yeah. So that was probably the biggest turning point of Juno 2 years ago. We were following this trajectory and we realized we don't want to keep going Series B, Series C, Series D. This isn't the kind of business we want to build. And so we decided to sell Juno. And there was this investment company that was a perfect match. They were amazing because they're one of the best investment platforms in the UK. I can't name them, but anyways, people probably will have their own hypotheses. And so we were going to work with them so that, because we have so many users who want to start investing off the back of Juno, and making sure that these users are supported to invest on this investment app that is genuinely one of the best out there. And so they were going to buy us for 15 million, and they were going to give us a huge budget to keep running Juno independently within their head office. And it was like this deal that was just like the epitome of success. And we spent 6 months in due diligence with them. It was the most nerve-wracking time of my life.
It's a grueling process.
Grueling process. And especially at the time, it was just Alexia and I who were left in the business because we put everyone on freelance because we needed to manage cash flow. And so we were both trying to run the business and at the same time do this acquisition. There were pitches after pitches after pitches. Each time you progress like at a higher level until the final pitch with the CEO of this like C-suite company. And it was so both like the most exciting time in my life and also the most difficult. And it felt like we were running a marathon. And then finally we got to terms that we all agreed on. And the day it was meant to be signed, their CEO, the CEO of the group, resigned for a completely different reason. Like it had nothing to do with Juno.
Not resign tomorrow.
Just today. And it was heartbreaking because it completely fell through. Like there was no CEO for a while. The new CEO was going to pick up, and we were getting to the end of our runway. We didn't have a team anymore. And most importantly, it felt like we had been running a marathon.
Yeah.
And suddenly you get to 10 centimeters before the finish line and the finish line disappears and you just crumble.
I can't imagine what that felt like.
It was horrible. We both, we went to my mom's place and I remember Alex and I, we were just crying all the time. And it was like, at the same time, it was funny because, at some point you have to laugh about the absurdity of what just happened. But I remember because each time we then had a business to pick up. And so suddenly we had to go back to this business that hadn't been given any love for 6 months. We didn't have a team anymore. Everything was in shambles. It was like, and each time we tried to log in front of our computer, we would just both like cry.
Like, where do you start?
Where do you start? Like, how do you go back from here? Yeah. And luckily
how did you go back from there?
We took a break. We actually took a break, and our investors were so supportive. And yeah, I can't believe they actually supported us in doing that. They were like, put the company on autopilot, take a break. And we took a real serious break for like 2-3 months.
That's amazing.
We didn't touch anything. And it was incredible because you also realized that so much of this constant push is artificial. Like, we stopped posting on social media for a month. Nobody noticed. And it's interesting, comes back to what we were talking about, the financial seasons. Like, this is exactly that, is realizing that you taking 3 months off, the world isn't going to crumble.
Yeah.
And the place you're going to move from when you come back is going to be so much more powerful than the place you left from. Like, we were just in fear and scarcity and so much pain when we left. When we came back, we actually had time to reflect on what had happened, to reflect on like, okay, now that this has happened, where do we want to take the business next? And for me, it was, the acquisition was also in some part living out a dream that maybe wasn't mine. Like, I was so excited. I was going to be an exited founder by the age of 27. You know, I would have millions in my bank account. That's a measure of success that isn't the one that I was personally aspiring to, because what I cared the most about is the mission of Juno. And in a certain way, yes, we would have stayed independent, but we would have also been part of a huge financial institution that had their own decisions.
Like, things were going to change.
Things were going to deeply change.
It wasn't going to be your baby as it is now, or as it was.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's interesting to think there is like, why are you building your business? Are you building to sell it? And then what are you going to do? You know, are you building because you care about, like, I want to spend my life doing this.
Yeah.
And it's not what investors want to hear, because they're terrified from that statement. Yeah. But for me, it's like, this is what I want to wake up every morning and do. And maybe it will change and take on different forms. But why do I want to sell it to someone who eventually has more of a commercial interest towards, you know, pushing certain products than actually what I care about, which is changing women's lives through financial education? I think what I'm not willing to compromise, it's been interesting that the acquisition was quite a powerful imprint of like a wake-up call. It's like, how do we build businesses around our lives so that we don't lose the sense of what actually matters? So that's, I could never do that if I was running a Series B business or a Series C business or something like that.
I think you mentioned that your Juno is now profitable. What does the new path look like?
Yeah. Smaller, definitely. Like, it's profitable, but it's much smaller than it was at one point. So our ambitions were growing much slower, and we're a lot smaller, which also allows us to have a much steadier rhythm. I think it's smaller, but it's a lot deeper. So, for example, the courses that we're offering now, it's like this 6-week money school that we're offering, where it's like 6 weeks where we're doing it together. A group of 100 women, and we're starting together, we're ending together, two calls a week, where it's like, okay, let's figure out these pieces, ask your questions. We do what are called co-working sessions, which I love, which is just everyone comes together and just works on their own financial stuff. And then we have a space to ask questions. So that's part of like, maybe there's only 100 people in the course rather than 100,000 on the app. But for those 100 people, it's going to go so much deeper than what they had access to on the app. So yeah, I agree with your point about impact. It's sometimes smaller is deeper.
Yeah, and I think going back to the point around how all of this gets transmitted from generation to generation, someone who has gone way deeper into the work, they're going to then impact maybe their children or their friends and family, and that can really spread and have a ripple effect.
In the last course, actually, a lot of the women said why they signed up, they said it ends with me. Like, the generations of sacrifice, of being dependent on a man, not being able to live a life that I love, like, it ends with me. And there's something so powerful in that, of like, you're going to set a completely new example for your daughters after this.
As a founder, the role changes dramatically throughout the different stages, and you've been through that roller coaster. So what actually shifted for you through those different stages, and which version of the role do you love the most?
I think the biggest shift is when you move from executor to manager. That's a huge change because suddenly you're spending most of your time in investor meetings and on one-on-ones, and you're not actually in the meat of building something. And I didn't like that transition at all. Working with like leadership coaches was for me the biggest game changer in Juno, because you have the hardest part of being a founder is like, you have so much responsibility and you have no one to turn to. they might not have the answers, but they'll help you clarify your own process.
I guess the advice there for anyone building a business or going through like the fundraising process is, again, get clear on your strengths, your skills, your value, what you enjoy doing, and shape the business in a way that you can continue to do those things.
It takes a very different kind of person often to be the ideator versus the manager. And so maybe the best thing to do is to bring in a CEO, and you can stay in your role as ideator and you bring in someone senior who has experience with running a Series A company. And they...
Final question.
Yes.
What does money enable in your life today that perhaps it didn't before?
Freedom, for sure. And I think having money enables me to move out of love rather than fear. I think that's a big thing for me of defining success on my own terms is, am I moving out of a place of overflow, of excitement, or am I moving out of a place of fear, of something that I'm trying to compensate for or something that I'm scared of?
And do you find that your perception of your financial freedom is tied to the success of the business financially?
I've definitely uncoupled from the business a lot, and that was a big part of the post-acquisition process. Is like disidentifying from the baby. Like, it was so challenging to be like, who am I if I'm not the founder of Juno? Because I've spent 6 years just being the founder of Juno, and also getting quite like boxed into this identity of like Forbes 30 under 30, all the glamorous things that, you know, your ego latches onto of like, look at me, I'm super successful. And then when that crumbles for a while, it's like, okay, do I still exist, or was I just the founder of Juno? And rebuilding that outside, finding my connection to my hobbies, to my passions, to friends, to community, to other things that I cared about, so that there is a Margot outside of Juno, was such an important part of the process.
That was the end of our questions. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It was such a good conversation.
I loved it so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Let's keep the wheels turning and the community growing. So make sure to subscribe. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests we can bring you.